want to share with you a movie that I saw this past weekend. It's called 1917, and it is an incredible movie. And the story is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to give any spoilers. And it's not, in fact, a lot of it's fictional. It was inspired by the director. Apparently, the director is a great grandfather who was a messenger in the war. And it doesn't tell you what battle it is. It takes place in 1917, which means the British tactics have evolved from their colonial mentality to a grand warfare mentality. So the generals aren't that incompetent like they were at the start of the war. Well, not all generals were incompetent. There were some pretty brilliant ones in 1914 and 15 as well. But it's just a story of these soldiers. But what's really striking about it is it just felt so real being there. You're following these two soldiers along, young privates or corporals, and they're trying to just do their job. But it immerses you into the movie. And it's done in real time in a lot of ways. I know they had to have cuts and breaks, and they filmed over several days. But it feels like it's just one continuous shot. And it brings you through the entire movie with you holding your breath in many ways. So I highly encourage you to go out and see this movie. And World War I sometimes gets to, as I transition out of a math teacher into a history teacher, at least I hope I'll be a history teacher someday, World War I gets a lot of unfair treatment in a lot of history classes. The focus is on, some of the causes. We talk about, the assassination in Serbia and the Treaty of Versailles. But the impact is still with us today, those connections. And we also say, World War II was a direct derivative of that, but we can also go back further and look at the Franco-Prussian War, of that treaty that happened in 1871 at the end of that conflict, but also in the headlines of what we're seeing today, such as we can trace the Sykes-Picot Agreement to the trouble in Syria, and the Anglo-Persian Agreement of in the war 1919, I think it was somewhere around there, of establishing what's going on in Iran today. So we still live with World War I in our news. If you have a family member in the military and they're looking at possible deployment to the Middle East, it's an ongoing tension of what was left over from World War I in many respects. Now, a historian will argue, well, it can go back further than that to the Ottoman Empire, the Balkan conflict of the, many centuries before, so on. But this story doesn't mention it, but it actually takes place during the Passchendaele conflict. At least that's the way I can gather it. I have no real evidence that that's what he was thinking of, because the movie is largely fictional. It doesn't specify a type of battle. The commanders are fictional. The names are fictional. But here's a couple of pictures of Passchendaele in 1917. Not near as traumatic as the Somme, which the British lost like 20,000 dead. Not casualties, but dead, within the first hour or so of the battle, which went on to last for a few months before it petered out and really achieved not much, other than just a lot of attrition on both sides. That was in 1916, and Verdun prior to that as well. And I had a chance to visit the cemetery in Verdun, and it just awes you. And those monuments in stone are just reminders, a cautionary tale to us, of the human condition. And it baffles me. This is one of the things, being prior military, it baffles me that human beings have two contrasting traits. We have the music of Bach and Beethoven and the art of Rembrandt, such beautiful things that we create. And then look at these pictures. This is the other thing that we create. How do we balance that? What causes these same human beings that can create beautiful poetry and incredible destruction at the same time? And it's something that people have been asking this for a very long time. You could read the Greeks that talk about it. This is a classic photo from World War I. I believe it's the Somme. So this was probably taken in 1916 of a British soldier and carrying his friend probably. And that captures World War One for me. This picture right here, it's very iconic. You'll see it probably in history books, I would imagine. Um, just try and imagine yourself there. And when I was in France a few years ago, we stopped at some place to get actually a Subway sandwich. And we just were driving along and stopped at some place, and everybody was wearing T-shirts. They're celebrating 75 years of peace in Europe. And I thought about it. I said, okay, what was the longest period of time that Western Europe, I mean, relative, we still had some, problems in Ireland and the Basque countries and Spain and a few other issues. But I'm trying to think throughout history the longest time Europe had peace. And it's not easy to find. Because even during the Pax Romana, there were still battles on the German frontier. And the Hadrian's Wall was built for a reason. So we are living in a pretty darn good time. I know it sounds scary on the news, but be grateful for all the effort that people put in trying to end, well, conflict in Europe at least, but it's still going on elsewhere. We're getting better. I think we are. So here is the cemetery at Passchendaele. And I hope that many of you get a chance to go visit these military cemeteries in Europe or in Arlington Cemetery or even the one here in Fort Worth. These military cemeteries bring your mind to a different way of thinking in a way. It's hard to explain. I just urge you to go and just walk amongst those monuments where it says soldier of the Great War, because they didn't know they couldn't identify the person. But I encourage you to go see the movie and, be thankful for all those who fought before us. And think about our human nature. I'm rambling right now because it was a very emotional movie and it's going to stick with me for months. I really urge you to go see it when it opens on January 10th. Alrighty, I'm going to call it a night. Bye.